Good morning, Michael. Michael Feehan. Michael is a gentleman I met at Sage Active Clinic, where exercise physiologists and myotherapists roam and help people out with different ailments and illnesses. And Michael has a rare and unique challenge, and it's called ankylosing spondylitis. So, yeah, that's a mouthful. It took me a while to get my tongue around that. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself and about ankylosing spondylitis, how you got it,
Well,
and what it actually is.
okay. Ankylosing spondylitis actually goes by three names now. The first name, it was called Marie Strumpel disease. That was probably in the 1930s, 1920s. And then it was called ankylosing spondylitis. Now, it's always been around, the disease. In fact, they have found Egyptian mummies with fused spines, proving it's been around for a long, long time. And but in the 20th century, it was really discovered when English men in the Second World War were going for their medicals. And a lot of the doctors noticed that young men were complaining about this ailment they had with their backs, where they had to sort of just roll out of bed of a morning. And they started noticing a common sort of denominator with this particular thing. And from then on, it was investigated that this was affecting their posture and that they were in chronic pain and so forth. Um, and so it was looked upon and studied, and they still believe, and a lot of doctors right up until probably now didn't quite understand what ankylosing spondylitis was. And so they looked at it and thought, well, there are so many people, so many young men, mostly young men, which is what they thought, mostly young men got it, but actually it's now been proven that there's equal amount of females that get it as well. And they noticed that the possibility of a germ called the Klebsiella germ or bacteria, which is a very common germ, by the way, is getting into the recipient's bloodstream, and the immune system is going after it, and it goes into the spine, the germ, and the immune system attacks the germ, but in hence doing that, it attacks the sinew in between the bone. Now, this virus can hide in the eyes, in the spine, in the heart, and in the stomach. So anywhere that goes, the immune system will go after it. Now, in saying that, you have to be a genetic type for it to be active. And the genetic marker is called HLB27. And so if you've got that HLB27 plus the triggering of the actual condition, you're more than likely to get it. And it specifically in textbook style comes on in late teens. Yeah. And it comes on with the sacroiliac joints at the bottom of your spine. It starts there usually, and then creeps its way up the spine. And as it creeps its way up the spine, it fuses the spine. It can be either mild or it can be severe. Rodney Hogg, I believe, had it. There has been many sportsmen who have had it. Ed Sullivan, the night show host in the United States, had it. Peter Alexander, the tennis player, had it. And it's a very, very painful disease when it's active. It can burn out, which in other words, if it goes through the spine, goes through your body, and it's got nowhere else to go, it'll stop. But while it's active, and in those days, in the 1960s, in the late 70s, when I was diagnosed, the only thing you could treat it with in those days was anti-inflammatories. It's all changed now, of course. My rheumatologist at that stage, who's now passed away, was one of the best rheumatologists of the time. He was a Collins Street specialist in Melbourne, very English, very proper man, used to smoke cigarettes and drink black coffee in his surgery. And he assessed me. He would say, bend over, and he wanted to see the flexibility in my spine. He checked me out thoroughly. He didn't make any assessments until I had the blood test. Once I had the blood test and came back to see him, he says, yep, you've got HLB27, you have ankylosing spondylitis. Our aim is by the time you're 40, that you can walk down the street and see the horizon, because if you don't, the disease will bend you over and turn you into a question mark shape, your spine, if you looked at you on the side. Yeah.
How did you get it, Michael? And when?
Okay, so I got it. What I think happened is I damaged my sacroiliac joints in the back of a car. I was in the back of one of those Suzuki four-wheel drives, and the driver went over a big pothole, and I was in the back, and there was sort of a metal shelf, and it hit my sacroiliac joints. And I was in terrible pain after that, but then it settled down. I went to the doctor. The doctor said, after having it x-rayed, no damage. There's just inflammation around your sacroiliac joints. We left it at that, gave me some anti-inflammatories, sent me on my way. About 6 or 7 months later, I went back to him and I said, I am in terrible pain. And he said, where? And I said, everywhere. And he says, okay, then, well, it could be one of two things. It could be rheumatoid arthritis, or it could be ankylosing spondylitis. I'm thinking the latter. Mm-hmm. Now, at that time, I was working at the Toyota Fisherman's Bend factory, putting doors on cars. And I remember bending over to put a door on, and I got this incredible locking sensation in my back where I couldn't actually straighten up my back. I went home. In fact, I walked out at lunchtime at that place and I never returned. Yeah, it was pretty awful. And I was in so much pain that I was out of work for a while. And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, said, look, why don't you just go on sickness benefits? And I went, really? And they said, yeah, go on sickness benefits. And I went and saw at that particular stage, there was a place in Melbourne called the Bathroom Building. It was a great, great big green building with green tiles out front. It was a public service building. And so that's where the Commonwealth Medical Officer was. So I got assessed by a doctor there, and he noticed that I couldn't turn my neck, couldn't do this, I had virtually no flexibility. And the next thing was to go and see the CMO. Um, and I walked into this room which was all lined with wood, like a lawyer's chamber, you know. And he sat there and he talked to me and says, "Well, in your particular case, I believe that you should work and keep working because you'll just go to the pack if you don't, and you need to keep active, and it's the best thing for you." And I told him I was in shocking, terrible pain. He says, "Well, you just need to work through it, pretty much." And
How
so
old
that's
were
what
you?
I
How old?
was. I was 20 then.
Yeah.
I was 20, and I was as thin as a rake. I was very unwell. And not only that, part of the symptoms of ankylosing spondylitis is iritis, which is like an arthritis of the eye,
My God.
where your eye gets this terrible inflammation. And if it's not treated with cortisone drops, you'll go blind. You'll go blind. And so I would get that roughly twice a year severely. In fact, I got it so severely once I was put into the eye and ear hospital for a month. And then a few years later, and my condition is not improving at all because I'm only on anti-inflammatories. I was told by the rheumatologist at the time, the very proper English rheumatologist, lie on the floor for half an hour every day. I have another patient here. He's a farmer. He has his whiskey beside him. He lies on the floor half an hour every day, and then get up and each day underneath the shower, breathe in deeply so you can keep all your sternum and chest free. And that was basically the way it was treated then.
My
Uh,
God. How have you coped with all this? First of all, how old are you now, Michael?
64.
64. So we're talking
60,
40,
60, 64.
64, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so we're now talking 44 years of suffering.
Dreadful, dreadful suffering. I
Uh,
remember going to a doctor for just a day off from work to get a doctor's certificate near my workplace. And I said, I've got ankylosing spondylitis. And this doctor, who looked like he just had a big lunch of red wine and steak, said to me, "Oh, ankylosing spondylitis. Oh, that's a bastard of a disease." And I said, "You're not telling me anything I don't know already." But yeah, I've suffered right up until 1998. I was in absolutely diabolical pain, diabolical, until I had my double hip replacement by the very legendary orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Rodney Dalziel, who used to do all the footballers and the sportsmen at the Avenue Hospital, by the Melbourne Orthopedic Group, who has now sadly passed away as well.
I notice the hip replacements are very common. I've got two close friends who've just gone through that
Mm-hmm.
operation, and this day and age, they're in and out within 2 or 3 days of the hospital. In about 2 to 4 weeks, they walk around quite comfortably. In about 6 weeks, they're healed and on their way. So it's pretty amazing. How have you coped, and what damage has it caused to you? how's it affected your life? You know, what's happened?
Well, after I had the hips replaced, things started to improve markedly. I had, before the hip replacement, I was suffering from three symptoms of this disease. I was suffering from ulcerative colitis chronically, iritis in the eye, and of course, the pain of having this disease. If you could imagine if you ever had sciatica,
Yes.
okay, well, just imagine having sciatica down both sides of your legs all the time, right?
Not a
Doesn't
good
ever,
imagination.
yeah, it's pretty terrible. And
Yeah.
also not being able to bend or turn. So you're stiff, your neck is frozen, your spine is frozen, and your chest sternum is frozen, right? So you are, by mobility, you're walking around like you're a puppet from the Thunderbirds, pretty much. In fact, I remember a technician at Telstra saying that to me once. You look like a puppet from the Thunderbirds. Uh, he did apologise to me lately, though. Uh, he was a guy who had one of these genius technicians, but he had Asperger's, and he just didn't know what he was saying. But funny enough, he came up and he says, "I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to say that." I said, "No worries. It's all good."
How's it
Um,
affected your life, Michael?
how's it
Like
affected
what
my
what
life?
impact
Okay.
has it had?
Funny enough, um, it hasn't stopped me from doing anything. I can't run. Um, I've been able to pursue all my pursuits. I've been able to work. Um, I've been able to have plenty of good relationships with people, and I've been married twice. Um, and uh, the first person was for my first marriage. My wife was extremely supportive to start with, but sooner or later they just can't deal with any longer. And my most recent marriage was a very lovely, beautiful person, but life happens and
Sure.
things, yeah, we go our own way. But as far as it affecting my life, I would say it's impeded my career. I was studying to be a photographer, and I being a photographer is a very physical job.
Yeah.
I had no interest when I was 18 of ever working in an office. I was an artistic person. I was only interested in the arts. I was quite bohemian, actually. Um, and I was put into very straight 9 to 5 workplaces, which did not agree with me at all. But I had to make a living.
Yeah, sure.
I had to make a living, and so I couldn't do my chosen career, even though I kept studying it and kept a big hand in it. But it's affected my career, and of course, it's impeded my health terribly, where I'm limited functionally, physically, and I have a bit of a problem driving as well. I can't run. I can walk for a certain amount of time. I'm not in any pain anymore
Wow.
after the hips were replaced. For some unknown reason, In 1998, they gave me a gigantic blood transfusion. All the symptoms stopped. And for other people who've got this condition, it goes on forever. So I'm not on any
Wow.
painkillers. I mean, no anti-inflammatories, no painkillers. I take a Panadol every now and again, and I might take a naprogesic every now and again. But, my bed has to be of a certain bed, and my neck has to be supported at a certain angle. If you can imagine lying on the floor, most people's head touch the floor.
Mhm.
Mine doesn't. It
Yeah, I
sits
got it.
up. It sits up at about 7 or 8 inches,
Wow.
because it's fused. It's
So,
completely fused.
so similarly, kyphosis is curvature of the spine, and it
Yes,
causes
I also have that as well.
you have
So,
kyphosis as well.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I have kyphosis as well. It's the spine is deformed,
Uh-huh.
um, and the lumbar, which normally comes in like an S shape,
Yeah.
is is flat. Is flat.
Well, having all these restrictions, Michael, in mobility, and it'll impact your health as well.
Hmm.
Uh, what sort of corrective actions have you taken in your life to stay healthy? Like, um, it's not just a disease that will impact a person's lifestyle. So,
Mm.
if you're not getting the right nutrition, the right sunshine and exercise and things like that, you'll get other debilitating illnesses and diseases
Mm.
as well. So,
Hmm.
how's it affected your health? And what steps have you taken
Yep.
to compensate to stay healthy? Because at 64, despite that horrendous situation you've got,
Mm.
I notice you seem to present a good aura, reasonable health. So,
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a. You've got to have a strong mind. You've got to keep going. It's the only way. If you give up just a bit, you'll go downhill very, very quickly. So when I had the disease was active, they believed one of the theories was that the Klebsiella virus fed on starch, which is in pasta, rice, white bread, potatoes, all of that.
oh my God.
And they believed that if you avoided those foods and avoided sugar and to a certain degree alcohol, but you could drink red wine apparently, it would lessen the inflammation. It would lessen the inflammation. Now, I did find that a bit. I did find it did actually work a bit, but not much. Not much.
Okay.
I would get flare ups all the time. So while I had the disease when I was active, I did hydrotherapy, which I found beneficial. Um, I tried to stay in a job that kept me active, but really, I was told by a doctor to find a sedentary job. And really, that was my downfall. I should never have done a sedentary job. Never. Because it caused all sorts of problems. Because when this disease was first discovered, they thought, oh, to keep the posture straight, we'll put these people in a bloody splint, you know?
Yeah. Got
Didn't
it.
work. Didn't work, made them worse. The whole
Wow.
thing, the whole thing with ankylosing spondylitis is to stay active. Today, if you're a young person with ankylosing spondylitis, they give you autoimmune drugs and you are highly recommended to do yoga, a lot of
Mhm.
stretching, a lot of stretching, a lot of moving, and if you take the new drugs that are available now, you will, in most cases, not all, stay pain free. It'll slow the disease down, and you'll keep your body from stiffening up. It will stiffen up eventually, but for the time being, it'll slow the whole thing down. But none of that was around when I was younger. So I'm left with the damage. The
Yeah.
completely fused spine from the base of my skull to my coccyx is
Wow.
completely fused like concrete.
I
Concrete.
notice, I notice when I see you at Sage Active Clinic doing your exercise physiology, and you're able to do rotational exercises with the cables, and you're able
Mm.
to
Yeah,
uh, pretty
I don't
much.
have a problem. I don't have a problem with strength. I'm quite strong in the arms. It's the cardio I find hard.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you hate the
also,
cardio.
I've got to mention this. I've when I was active, I did a lot of cycling,
Uh-huh.
and I had accidents. And when I had accidents, and you fall off a bike with my condition, you break.
Wow.
You break bad, Brad. So I've had a broken back, I've had a broken neck, I've had a completely shattered arm, and I've had a plate in my head. So I have 6 pieces of metal in my body.
Wow. How does
Yeah.
that go for you at the airport?
Well, you don't want to be taken into a private room to be checked out thoroughly, put it that way. And if they start putting on the white gloves, well, look out.
Oh my God. Um,
Yeah.
so the exercise regime I've seen you enter into lately, how's that impacting your situation? What changes are you feeling by applying the exercise?
Well, since I've been starting to go more often, so I'm going now, I'll be going now twice a week, and I do the assault bike almost every day.
Wow.
Initially, when I go on the assault bike, I sort of go into a bit of a shock afterwards, but it's the following day. I feel really, really good. I feel more energetic. I feel buoyant in my mood. Um, I'm have been on antidepressants for at least 6 to 7 years, and they are being receded. I'm tapering off them now, so I'm
Great.
down to half. Um, and so Rob, who owns Sage Active, as you know, he told me that doing these exercises will make me feel better. And it
That,
is. It's making me actually feel better and more energetic. Um, and I'm and the other part of going to Sage is to try and lose the stomach weight, because with my condition, you cannot do core exercises because your spine doesn't move. So you've got to find other ways of doing it. I've been told to walk. I hate walking. And but I've got to do it. I've got to do it. And my aim is for Easter time to be slimmed right down. I was 61 kilograms for most of my life. At one stage, I was 6'1", and
wow.
now under 6 foot. Yeah.
Well, tell me, with the exercise, are you doing a diet regime as well? Are you looking into your food situation to help the weight drop?
Well, I'm a very weak-willed person
Mhm.
as far as that's concerned. One thing I have done though is I have almost stopped all sugar, and I've been consistent with that. My downfall is carbohydrates and bread, good quality bread, like French, good French baguettes. You know, I
Okay.
just I can't help myself with them.
If you treated yourself to, say, sourdough spelt or
Hmm.
even pumpernickel bread, and you had it
Yes,
in
yes,
real moderation, at
yes,
least you're dealing with more of a complex carb with the pumpernickel bread rather than just your straight
yes.
carbs. And I occasionally, very occasionally, like
Mm.
so occasionally, have that because I don't want diabetes too. I'm headed up
Mm.
to 72 at the end of this year, and I want to
Uh-huh.
make sure that diabetes doesn't knock on my door. So
Mm.
I've
Nor mine.
always,
Mm.
or yeah, I noticed that with your locked spine, there might be some seated position where you could be locked in, where you could do some leg raising of some description, which could work your core. That'd be something to talk to the exercise physiologist about to uh,
Yeah,
produce produce some core exercises
yeah,
where you don't have to really do anything with your spine.
yeah.
I don't know how they're the experts in that part, and they would assess that for you. Tell me, Michael, with all this going on and with the life that you've led and still leading,
Hmm. Hmm.
what is the optimistic future that you're living into?
Well, two things have happened to me in the last 12 months. The first one being that I separated from my wife on good terms, and that was beneficial. And the second thing is that I retired from my workplace with one of the big four banks as an e-fraud specialist. And um, I have been able to indulge back into my creative pursuits, which I have just had so much satisfaction. My social life has increased. Um, like all I'm back in touch with all my old friends. Um, I'm just living a much more fulfilling life, a much more peaceful life. Peaceful, uh,
Yeah,
practicing mindfulness, practicing being present, um, just calmer. It's and the exercise is increasing that as well. And I'm lucky to be, as you know, living right next to Sage and living in an area where I've got all the resources nearby, which I thank my lucky stars for. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's that's fantastic. Look, you have a podcast. Is that happening yet?
I have a YouTube channel.
A YouTube channel.
I have two short videos on there, and I also have a
Rena said, just well, confirming which account you want me to send it to.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Um, that's just the ex-wife getting in contact with me, wanting my bank details, like they all do. Okay. Um,
Uh,
so, I've completely lost my train of thought now. What were you asking me, Freddie? Sorry.
yeah, you got me as well. Look,
Okay.
it's all good. Moving forward, if people
Yeah.
would like to know more about your YouTube channel,
Oh
um,
yes, my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is called "A Slave to My Bones"
"A
because
Slave to
that's
My Bones"
a slave to my bones.
by
And
Michael Feehan. That's
uh,
F double
well,
E H A N.
HAN, but really, it's not listed under my name. It's listed under the title, which is A Slave to My Bones. And it's a semi-humorous channel where I make light of something that is quite serious. But I'm uploading another video within the next week, and it's going to be talking about mostly what we've talked about today. So it'll be a lot more serious. And I think I've got one planned about driving a vehicle with my condition as well.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what we'll do is we'll include in the footnotes some details how people can follow you on YouTube. And
I also have a Instagram as well.
oh, okay.
Which is also called A Slave to My Bones. And the other Instagram is called Slave to the Pages.
Pages.
Yes, Slave to the Pages.
Okay.
Well, but it's going to change. That title's going to change soon.
All right. We'll just stick with Slave to My Bones on Instagram and on YouTube.
A Slave to My Bones. Slave to My Bones, yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your precious time, Michael, and those insights that people can learn a little bit more about the disease and have some hope that there are ways through it. Not that people need to get a double hip operation to alleviate the pain, but with the modern science of health and wellness, especially exercise being medicine, there is a way that you can reclaim your life. So
absolutely. There is always options, and people should always look at options. If you've got this condition, don't ever give up. Ever, ever, ever give up.
Stay strong and be positive. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problems at all. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we'll see how you are in another, say, 6-12 months, and maybe do it again and find out what's changed for you with that exercise program.
Hopefully I'll be jacked. You know?
Yeah. Well, you're getting there. I'm noticing you're putting up the weights and things like that. For those listening and watching, please feel free to subscribe and ring the bell, and you'll find here on our channel a lot more insights to people with rare and unusual conditions and the way back to good health and a happy life. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Freddie, for having me.
Pleasure.